So today we're jumping right into the material. We are doing section 1.1. Section 1.1 is all about adding and subtracting integers. So our goal today is to review adding and subtracting signed numbers. Signed numbers means positive and negative numbers. We also call those integers. So we're going to add them and subtract them today. A very important word, review. If you feel like today is easy, that's a good sign. Okay? If you feel like today is challenging, you need to go home and review your algebra notes from last year. If you have a calculator, I would get it out now. You are allowed to use calculators today. It'll make this actually a whole lot easier. We're going to talk a lot about how to type these things into the calculator. A lot of students have calculators. They don't know how to use them properly. So if you feel like today's a little slow, it's just because we're trying to get you back in the swing of things. Any questions before we get going? If you forgot to bring your calculator, you are working by hand. I apologize. Okay, you do not need to write this in your notes. So put your pencils down. Just soak it all in, okay? So here's just some more examples, kind of like what we did in the warm-up. I have $6 in my pocket. Imagine that, $6. Then my mom gives me $5. I now have what? Yes, sir. 11. What we did right there was adding two positive numbers to get 11. Very easy stuff, right? Good. All right, let's look at another one. I owe my dad $10. I also owe my brother $3. How much money do I have? Yes.
$13.
Careful there. It says, how much do I have? Do I have $13?
No.
Oh, sorry. My iPad is rebelling.
It's okay. Okay.
Okay, so you don't have $13. What do you have?
It doesn't say you owe.
You owe. Owing someone is like what?
Subtracting your amount of money.
Right, so this is like a negative amount of money, right? So do you have $10 or do you have negative $10?
You have negative 10.
So this is like negative $10 because I owe my dad.
And then
What else is happening? You
Negative.
also owe...
negative $3.
Very good. So this is like negative 10 plus negative 3, which is?
Negative 13.
Negative 13. Very good. So you have negative $13. I'm not a huge stickler for dollar signs. If you put it, great. If not, it's not the end of the world. What are your questions here? All right. This says both of the examples above included numbers with the same sign. First we added two positive numbers, then we added two negative numbers. Can we come up with a rule for adding numbers that have the same sign? So what did we do in both of those problems? How did we get positive 11? How did we get negative 13?
We subtracted.
So 10 and 3, when you subtract them, gives you 13? Anyone else have a thought? What did we do on the first one? With the numbers 10 and 6 to get 11. What did we do? You added them. They were both positive numbers, so our answer was positive. We did the same thing in the next one. We added the 10 and the 3. They were both negative, so we kept the answer negative. So you do need to write this in your notes. This is a heading here. Rules for adding numbers with the same sign. You add the numbers. And you keep the sign. Now, those of you that brought your calculators, as instructed to do so yesterday, don't really have to memorize these rules because the calculator will do the rule for you. This is mainly for those who did not bring a calculator, but everyone needs to write it in their notes. So let's look at two other ones. this says you dig a hole that's 6 feet into the ground. So imagine yourself digging. All right, I'm gonna draw you a little picture. Some of you might end up doing this as a career someday. Who knows what you're gonna end up doing? All right, so this is you digging a hole. Okay, this is 6 feet.
That's actually pretty good.
Here's you. It's your little shovel. Okay. Hopefully you're using a power tool, but anyway. All right. So you dig a hole 6 feet into the ground. Boom. Some jerk comes along with a tractor and puts 10 feet of dirt on top of your hole. If you are not someone with imagination, let me draw you a little picture. Here's your tractor. It's a horrible tractor. It's got a little, like, one of those things on it, you know? It's a bucket, okay. Hopefully the guy has time to climb out of the hole before this happens. But comes along with dirt. This measures 10 feet. How high is the pile of dirt? 4 feet. How'd you get that? You added 4. How'd you come up with the 4? The 4 is not up there anywhere.
I subtracted 6. I mean, yeah, 10 from 6.
Okay, so the 6 is what type of number? If you're digging a hole, you think that's a positive number or a negative number? I'm going down, going down, going down. Would that be positive or negative?
Negative.
Negative. So this is like a -6 plus, all right, big guy in a tractor, 10 feet of dirt. Is that positive 10 or negative 10?
Positive.
Positive, okay? And we said that that ends up with a dirt pile of 4 feet. All right, take a minute, soak it in. We had -6, we had positive 10, we ended up with a positive 4. Any questions on this? All right, here's another one. I have $5 for lunch. I bought a sandwich for $4. How much money do I have left? Easy one. What do you guys think?
$1.
$1. Okay, so having money is a positive. Owing money is a negative. We ended up with $1. What's an easier way to write this part right here? Yes, sir.
5 minus 4 is 1.
Very good. It's easier to just simplify the signs and make it a minus. Does what's on the board make sense to all of you? Okay. Let's see if we can come up with another set of rules. So, in your notes, here's another important thing. This does need to get written down. Rules for adding numbers with different signs. So the 10 and the 6, what did we do with those numbers? The 5 and the 4, what did we do with those numbers?
We subtracted.
Yes, you actually, even though it says adding numbers, you subtract the numbers. And then which number did we keep the sign of? Keep sign of I'll remind you, we had a -6 and a positive 10 and our answer was positive. We had a positive 5 and a -4 and our answer was positive. What's special about the 10 and the 5? They were
Opposite.
They were the positive ones, but they were also, did anyone notice anything else? They were the bigger number. Out of 6 and 10, we had more positives than negatives, right? Out of 5 and 4, we had more positives than we had negatives. So you subtract the numbers, you keep the sign of the larger number. I'm putting larger in parentheses. It's not really larger, because positive numbers are always larger than negatives, but the one that has more value. So we had more positives than negatives in both of these examples. But your answer could be negative. And we'll look at about 10 examples before we have your homework. So if you're like, I don't know what this woman is talking about, we will continue to practice. Again, this needs to be in your notes. This is one of the important things of today. Is subtraction any different than addition? Or how is it different? Let me write that last example we looked at. So we had 5 plus a negative 4, and we said that that was a 1. And then we also rewrote it to say 5 minus 4 equals 1. So are those any different? No, they're the same thing. So I'm just going to put a little side note. This should go in your notes too, this little star. Subtracting is the same as adding a negative. Important piece of information. Subtracting is the same thing as adding a negative. So some people change it when they go through it. Some people just type it into their calculator as is. It really just depends what makes sense in your head. And again, we will talk these through in our 10 examples. Hopefully you have a little bit of an idea what you're doing before you get your homework. These are probably the types of problems you're more used to seeing, right? Not big word problems about digging holes. These are the ones that need to be in your notes. So I'm going to give you a second to write them down. You need the problem and the answer. Just having like negative 14, that doesn't help you study for a quiz or a test. You need to write the problem down as well. So leave a little space either off to the side or skip a line so you can do your work. Just so there's a space to write your answer. Okay, now here is where the class is going to be a little divided. If you listened to directions yesterday and you brought a calculator, this should be like real quick, okay? Type it in as you see it. 5 plus sign. This is a negative. You can't write plus minus 7 in the calculator. The calculator will say error. So I want everyone with the calculator to type it in. Just as you see it. 5 plus, this is a negative, not a minus, 7. If it says error, raise your hand and I will come help you. If you did not bring a calculator, we need to talk about it. Are the signs the same or different? Positive 5, negative 7. Are those the same sign or different signs? Different. When they're different, you subtract the number. So I need to think 7 minus 5. What's 7 minus 5? 2. And did I start with more positives or more negatives in this example? Negative. So the answer is negative 2. So those of you who had a calculator, were you able to type it in correctly? Okay, those of you that just did it in your head, does that make sense? Again, if you want to think about digging a hole or using money, that sometimes makes these easier. If you had $5 and you owe someone $7, it's kind of like having negative $2. Okay? Any questions? Number 2, calculator people. This is the only sign that exists between 10 and 12, so enter it as a subtraction sign. If you put 10 and then and then a negative and then a 12, I don't think it will understand what you're saying. So it's a minus. People that don't have calculators, I'm starting with 10, I'm taking 12 away. Where will that end up giving me or putting me along? Negative 2, yeah. It's sort of like saying 10 plus a negative 12. The signs are different. So we subtract the numbers, we keep the sign of the larger number. Questions? Okay, pay close attention to number 3 because students struggle with this a lot. These parentheses are basically just so you don't mush these signs together when you're writing it, okay? It's just basically showing that this is a negative sign, this is a plus sign, and, you know, like if you're writing it in your notebook, they don't just sort of mesh together to give you like a long plus sign, okay? If you have a calculator, you can enter the parentheses or not. It doesn't matter in this case, but you need the plus sign. Don't forget the plus. If you forget the plus and you use the parentheses, it'll think it's multiplication, so don't do that. But this is just 3 plus a negative 4. So are the signs the same or different? Same sign, different sign. Different. Different signs. You subtract the numbers. When you subtract 4 and 3, you get 1. And do I have more positives or more negatives? Negative. So it's negative 1. Again, calculator people, these should be like boom, boom, boom. Non-calculator people, you need to work for it. What are your questions so far? All right. Write these in your notes. All right, number 4. Again, these parentheses are basically just drawing your attention to the fact that they're negative signs. They're not subtraction signs. They're negative signs. They're not like when you write it, it won't blend in with your plus signs. It's just helping you keep your signs straight. So it's a negative 8 plus a negative 9. So are the signs the same or different? The same. Both negatives. So what am I going to do with the 8 and the 9? Add them. That gives me 17. Negative 17. You add the numbers and you keep the sign when the signs are the same.
12 plus 20. So what's the sign going to be?
All right, next one. Negative 4 plus 4. So are the signs the same or different?
What's the sign?
Different. When they're different, you subtract the numbers, keep the sign of the larger numbers. So what's 4 minus 4? 0. Is 0 positive or negative? Neither. It's really neither. You don't need a sign with a 0. It's just 0. All right, negative 12 plus 20. Again, calculator people, just type it in as you see it. Don't use a minus sign. Use a negative sign. Some of the calculators will put an error if you get those confused. Negative 12 plus 20. Signs the same, signs are different. Different. When they're different, we subtract the numbers, keep the sign of the bigger number. So what's bigger, 12 or 20? 20. And 20 is positive or negative? Positive. So my answer here is going to be positive. Now subtract them. What do you get? 8. Positive 8. Very good. Is anyone regretting not bringing a calculator? Yes, okay. Get one. All right, here's our last 4 examples. So go ahead and write them down. We'll go through them as you're writing them. So number 7, 2 negatives with a plus sign in the middle. Anyone have an idea what we're going to do? So they have the same sign. When they have the same sign, what do we do with the numbers? You add them and you keep the sign. So this might require a little writing. They're both 2-digit numbers. So off to the side. If you don't feel confident, do it again in your head. We have 12. We have 14. Add the ones. You get 2 and 4. That's 6. Nothing to carry over. So you add the 1 and the 1. You get 2. 26. So is that 26 going to be positive or negative? Negative. Very good. So over here, negative 26. Circle your final answer. It makes grading it a lot easier, and it will keep us from having any arguments with you when you're like, no, this is my answer. You don't get to write like 10 numbers and just pick which one you want after the fact. You'd be surprised. All right, number 8's kind of tricky. There's a bunch of different ways you can think about number 8. Remember, we talked about that subtracting is the same thing as adding a negative. So some people like to think of this as 14 plus negative 23. If that's your thing, roll with it. Some people just like to think of it as like taking away. Like I have 14 of something, but I'm taking away 23. Am I going to have enough to stay in the positive?
No.
No, this is going to take me down into the negative, okay? It's like standing on a 14-foot pile of dirt and digging down 23 feet. You're going to end up way down in the earth, okay? Or if you have $14 and you owe $23, you're like, oh, I'm in the hole. I'm in the red, okay? So this is going to be a negative. We just have to figure out what negative it is. How am I going to do that? Signs are different.
Subtract.
We're going to subtract it, okay? So when you subtract, you think of the bigger number first. So 23 minus 14. We need to borrow here. So remember that brings a 1 over here. So it's like 13 minus 4, which is
9.
9. And then 1 minus 1 is 0. So my answer is negative 9. Good. Now, I do this stuff off to the side. I mean, we're definitely not going to slow this down to the point where we're doing like a whole day on this because you have calculators. If you're choosing not to use a calculator, you are choosing to review these math skills on your own. Okay? 12 minus negative 4. Now, we haven't really talked about this yet. What is a minus negative? Does anyone remember this from last? Yeah, two negatives next to each other become a positive. So this is actually like 12 plus 4. 16. They're both positive. Add them and keep the positive. Good. And then the last one. You're already in the negative. You've already dug a hole 8 feet. Now you're going to dig some more 15 feet. Or, if you want to change it to the adding thing, it's like negative... Whoa, sorry. iPad rebelling.
Straight marker.
I know. It's like a minus... Or sorry, a minus 15 is the same thing as like adding a negative 15. So the signs are the same. So we're going to add the numbers and keep the negative sign. So my answer is going to be negative... Anybody know?
23.
23. Good. All right, I'll give you guys a second with this. This is the wrap-up. It's the opposite of the warm-up. The warm-up kind of gets our brains moving. This sort of wraps everything up so we can end the day. So if you're adding two, you don't need to write these down. This is just kind of a conversation. If I am adding two numbers that are both negative, what will my answer be? Adding two negatives. I'm digging a hole. I'm digging them more deeper. So it'd be negative. Yes, the signs are the same, so your answer will be negative. Good. If I'm adding a negative number and a positive number, so I have one of each, will my answer be negative or positive? Half positive, half negative. What do you guys think?
It depends on the bigger number.
It depends on the bigger number. So it will keep the sign of the bigger number. And remember, it's not really the bigger number, but it's the one you have more of. Do you have more positives or more negatives? So think if you owe more money than you have, or if you've dug a deeper hole than you started with, that's the sort of thing. The bigger number sign. What are your questions? All right, so I'm going to give you guys some time to work on your homework. You have about 13 minutes to do homework. That should be enough time to get the homework done. If not, you have to take it with you and bring it back at the beginning class tomorrow.